Game 7 of the NBA Finals is in the books. We'll dive into the legacy of this Game 7 and why it might be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Plus, the Thunder fans are celebrating, but there's one group in the NBA that absolutely cannot be happy about that win. We'll tell you who and why. Plus, another baseball umpire thinks he's the star of the show. All that and a whole lot more. It's right now on Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome into another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports, episode number 18. Wherever you're listening, I just want to say I appreciate you making us part of your day. And if you like what you hear, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And I don't know, maybe share the show with a friend who's obsessed with sports like you are. It's quick, it's easy, and it definitely helps us keep this thing growing. Well, look, we got a lot to discuss today, including the fans who hated the Thunder win more than anyone, and how I got something wrong with the baseball umpiring problem. It's even bigger than I realized. But all right, let's not waste any time. So let's begin with Game 7 of the NBA Finals. It's supposed to be the most thrilling, right? The most dramatic night in basketball, the culmination of an entire season's worth of sacrifice and strategy, a moment that lives on forever, etched into the history for buzzer beaters or championship parades, legacy-defining performances. And I think this year's NBA Finals will be remembered forever, but not for the usual reason. Because when people look back on Game 7 of the 2025 NBA Finals, they won't first think about the Thunder winning a championship and all that. They'll remember the moment that Tyrese Halliburton collapsed to the floor and the moment that the air completely went out of the building. Maybe everyone will move on quickly to whatever the next thing is, but that moment should be the moment where everything changes, because that was not just a devastating injury. It really was kind of the moment that should reverberate across the sports world, a real tipping point that shows that even an injury, which sounds as minor as a calf injury, has real ramifications, and nobody can plead ignorance anymore. Because for the Indiana Pacers, it was really shaping up to be one of the most inspirational playoff runs we have ever seen in the NBA. The NBA is a talent league where superstars win, and this was not that. This Pacers team was not a super team. It was not a roster of household names. This was a squad that played together and played fast, and most importantly, refused to go away. Cavaliers never realized what hit them when they played the Pacers. Pacers were the underdogs against the Knicks right until they silenced Madison Square Garden and ended the Knicks season in 6 games. And then they took Oklahoma City, the NBA's best regular season team, to the brink of elimination. Going into that series, most people thought Thunder in 5. No one expected the Pacers to still be there in Game 7. But there they were, one win away from pulling off the shocker, perhaps, again, the most unlikely championship run in the history of the sport. And leading the way was Tyrese Halliburton, the guy who made the whole thing work. And early on, it looked like it was going to be magical. 7 minutes into Game 7, he already had 9 points. He looked like he was about to drop one of those performances, a true legacy game on the biggest stage. And then it happened. One step, no contact, just a sudden reach to the back of the leg. And in that instant, everything changed. And we're not doctors, but we all knew it immediately because we had all seen it so many times before. Too many times, in fact. Kevin Durant in 2019, Aaron Rodgers a couple of years ago, Jason Tatum in this year's playoffs, all played through calf injuries, all eventually tore their Achilles. Now Tyrese Halliburton joins that list. He was dealing with the injury in the finals, but hey, it's a calf injury, right? He was listed by the team as questionable, but he came out on Saturday and said, no, I'm good to go. And of course he was good to go. It was just a calf injury, and this was Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And now he's likely lost for all of next season and maybe longer. This isn't just a bad break. It's not just an unfortunate coincidence. This clearly now is a trend. And after Game 7, teams, fans can't ignore it anymore. Because when you trace all these injuries, they follow the same path. First, a calf strain, the player quickly returns, and then boom, the Achilles tendon gives out. So we can't pretend this is bad luck anymore. There's obviously a real link between the calf and the Achilles ruptures, and it's time the league and teams start treating it that way. Because that's what makes this even more devastating is the story that Indiana was writing. They were not supposed to be here. They had no business hanging with the elite teams, never mind running past them. And against OKC, a team that looks like it's built for a 5-year run, the new latest dynasty in the making, they pushed it all the way to the final game of the season. And Halliburton was that engine. Everything revolved around him. His pace, his ability to make everyone better. And when he went down in Game 7, you could just feel it. Not just in the building, but around the league. The story had changed in an instant. So let's get to the bigger picture, because there's a lot of debate about the modern NBA schedule and how much players are being asked to do. So sure, the season is still 82 games. That hasn't changed, but the play-in tournament has added more meaningful games at the end of the year. Then you got the NBA Cup, which the league is pressing to put greater importance on the regular season, which seems like it has kind of been lost over the last few years, especially with load management. Throw in teams pushing for seeding into the final days of the season. And the wear on players is real, but you have to ask yourself, why is this happening now? Is this just a fluke, or is this a real problem that needs to be dealt with because it's just going to keep happening? A couple of things that I don't think that people have focused on enough. One is that the game is faster and more explosive and more positionless. So you have guys who are being asked to guard at the rim one possession and then chase a shooter 30 feet from the basket on the next. Tom Haberstraw, who's covered the league for many years, pointed out after Jason Tatum went down, quote, "The geometry of the game has changed. Wings like Tatum are guarding stretch bigs like Karl Anthony Towns who pull you everywhere, down low and then to the perimeter. Guards are bigs, bigs are guards. The floor is huge now, and the load on the legs is constant." I think that's a really good point, because Halliburton's not some 34-year-old vet on tired legs. He's 25. And if this can happen to him in his prime during the biggest game of his life, it can happen to anyone at any time. Jason Tatum's only 27. If this is the type of injury that can happen to even the youngest stars, it's got to send chills down the spine of NBA executives. Now, as for Halliburton, I get it. He wanted to play. That's what competitors do. And we as fans celebrate the instinct like that for decades. MJ's flu game or Emmitt Smith playing through a separated shoulder. Halliburton wasn't going to be the guy watching from the bench during Game 7. He wanted his team's fate in his terms. And frankly, as fans, we would have crushed him if he sat out Game 7 because of a calf injury. But that's kind of the point. Players will always try to play. They'll lie about how they feel, and they'll fight through the pain. So I don't know that there's any easy solutions to this. I do think at some point teams have to protect players from themselves, because the Pacers had a shot in Game 7, but they also had a shot at the title next year. They have a young core. They had momentum, and now that future, that present really, is immediately in jeopardy. Another part of this, why now? Why is this happening now? Is something that not a lot of people have talked about. The shoes themselves. Nick Van Exel, who played in the league for years, recently brought this up, that the move away from high-top sneakers could be a link. There's a 2010 clinical study that showed that high-top basketball shoes reduce the load on the Achilles by almost 10%. They limit the peak angle, basically how far the foot bends upward, which reduces the strain on the tendon. But over the last decade, players have moved almost exclusively to low tops or mid tops. A lot of that was because Kobe Bryant made them cool. Players wanted freedom of movement, and everyone kind of followed his lead. So those type of sneakers give you agility, but they don't give you much protection, not for the ankle, not for the calf, and certainly not for the Achilles. So it's a style choice, but it also might be a risk factor. One that no one has really talked about, probably because no one's really thought of it before. And look, this might be grasping at straws, but this is the time where I think every aspect of this falls under the microscope. So where do we go from here? Well, the NBA certainly can't ignore this moment. Not anymore. And not just because a star went down, but because how he went down, when he went down, and why was he playing in the first place? Teams are going to have to really rethink medical evaluations, and I get the feeling this stuff is going to get very clinical, very fast. As fans, we're going to get used to some new terms that we've never heard before. And as fans, we're going to have to adjust. We can't freak out every time a star rests on a Tuesday night. Load management is not just going to be a punchline, because now we know the alternative. The alternative is a Game 7 without the guy who got the team there. And the alternative is a year without Halliburton and maybe a very different Indiana Pacers team a year from now. So it's not soft to sit a player with a tight calf. It's smart, and it might be necessary if the league wants to avoid more situations like this that are remembered for who didn't play rather than who won. So Game 7 was supposed to be a celebration, and for the Oklahoma City Thunder, it was. But there's another part of this that is not simply a sidebar, because for 7 minutes, Tyrese Halliburton looked like he was about to give us the game of his life in a playoff run that was filled with those kind of moments for him. But instead, that narrative changed in the blink of an eye. And what we witnessed was a harsh reminder of just how fragile greatness can be and how quickly everything can pivot from triumph to heartbreak. It feels like the Achilles injury in basketball is basically the equivalent of Tommy John surgery in baseball, a career-altering, season-ending injury that requires long, an uncertain recovery and forces a player and teams to really kind of rethink how they do things. Halliburton's injury wasn't just about losing a player. It really was a cruel reality that the most important moments in sports come with the highest risks. And sometimes those risks catch up to even the brightest stars. But beyond that moment, this moment should serve as a wake-up call for the entire league. We really need to rethink how injuries are managed and how player health is prioritized. So as a fan who loves to glorify playing through the pain without question, I get the feeling we're inviting more of these kind of moments. And this isn't about taking away from the passion or the toughness that makes sports great. It's about protecting the future of the game and the players who make it possible. Halliburton's injury may have changed the course of an NBA Finals, but it also could change how the NBA approaches player care for years to come. The NBA prides itself on being a smarter, more forward-thinking league in terms of protecting its stars. And who knows, maybe this will be forgotten about in a day or two. That's always possible. But hopefully what happens next not just changes how teams handle injuries, but also changes how the entire league focuses on them. Because what's clear is after what we just saw, the connection between a calf injury and the Achilles is no longer a surprise, and no one anywhere can say they didn't see it coming. All right, let's talk about one of the longest standing grudges in professional sports. You know, for all the great rivalries in the NBA, there's one between two teams that have never actually even met. Because while the Oklahoma City Thunder are celebrating their first NBA championship, there's a group of fans who are not throwing confetti. In fact, they might have just thrown something at their television set. I'm talking about the people of Seattle, the Supersonic fans. They are still around. And yes, they are still bitter, they're still angry, and really they've got every reason to be. You see, the Supersonics moving to Oklahoma City, that was not just a case of a team relocating. It's not like when the Rams left St. Louis or when the Raiders bailed on Oakland. What happened to the Sonics was a carefully executed coup. It really was a heist that left the basketball-crazed city without the team they loved. Flashback to the early 2000s. The Supersonics were losing money, and then owner Howard Schultz, the Starbucks guy, blamed it mostly on the home stadium, Key Arena. It was too small, it was too outdated, it was saddled with a bad lease, it had the fewest seats in the league, it had no space for luxury boxes or restaurants or bars, and it sat in a public park, which meant no chance to expand. And in the era before streaming or digital revenue, merchandise and in-arena sales were everything. Schultz saw himself with a financial black hole. So what did he do? He went to the state legislature in 2006, asked for $200 million in public funding for a new or a renovated arena. Problem was, Key Arena really wasn't that old at the time, and the city had just shelled out money for the Seahawks and the Mariners. So when his plan didn't come together, he made good on a threat he once said he wouldn't follow through with. He sold the team, and not just to anyone, to Clay Bennett, a businessman from Oklahoma City. Now, at first, Bennett promised to keep the team in Seattle, but from the start, the writing was on the wall. His arena proposals were preposterous. They were never going to get approved, and within the year, he announced his intent to move the team. This despite the Seattle had a binding lease through 2010, the team was gutted. They were trying to diminish interest so the divorce would be cleaner. Ray Allen was traded, Rashard Lewis was let go, and it was clear they were burning it down to build something new elsewhere. Then Sonic fans got one last glimmer of hope. Steve Ballmer and a local group offered to build a new arena, but in the end, the city folded and the team was gone by 2008. And you have to see the Sonics were more than a basketball team to the people of Seattle. It was a part of the community. They were one of the few pro teams in Seattle before the rise of the Seahawks or the Mariners. And fans packed Key Arena, where it was so loud and so intimate, it kind of gave them a true home court advantage because the arena was so small That arena meant that fans were practically sitting on top of one another, and that city loved its team. Attendance was never a problem in Seattle. And after the team left, well, the heartbreak has never ended. It's been 17 years and they're still ticked off. And the timing could not have been worse. Kevin Durant was drafted by the Sonics in their final season. Russell Westbrook wore a Sonics hat on draft night before never playing a game in Seattle. James Harden was drafted shortly after the move. And the architect behind it all, Sam Presti, Seattle's last GM, he's now the GM in OKC. And fans have watched him build now 2 great championship-level cores, and they watched their team rise to prominence somewhere else. As bad as that is, the final gut punch came this year. Game 7 of the NBA Finals, a gritty Pacers team, 1 win away from a title, and then Tyrese Halliburton goes down with an Achilles injury and the Thunder won. But for Seattle fans, that win, I don't think feels earned. It feels stolen, just like for their team. Now Sonic fans are getting their hopes up again. The NBA's just wrapped up their media rights deal. Expansion is the next logical step. And Seattle, with a new state-of-the-art climate pledge arena, seems like one of the top candidates to get a team. And reports are Seattle and Las Vegas are the front runners, but after all Sonic fans have been through, it's hard to get your hopes up. And there would be a cruel irony in Seattle finally getting a team back the same year the Thunder, led by the MVP of the league, hoist the trophy as NBA champs. So the grudge continues. You would think after 17 years it would have faded, that time heals all wounds, right? Well, maybe not. Seattle fans still buy more Sonics merchandise than nearly any other team's gear. Simply Seattle is a local apparel company. They make nearly $1 million off Sonic items every year. There are podcasts dedicated to the team's history, documentaries, grassroots coalitions. There's even a Legends Fund that helps support former players. You see, the team may have left, but the fan base is still around. So for Sonic fans, despite all of Oklahoma City's success, for every banner or parade, it's never going to change what happened. That team was stolen from them. And while history may be written by the winners, as they say, legacy belongs to those who remember. And Seattle remembers everything. And this is not a story where there's just one villain. This feels like Die Hard, where the hero is fighting a bunch of villains. From Howard Schultz to Clay Bennett, from David Stern to Adam Silver. So the NBA might expand someday. Maybe Seattle will finally get their Sonics back. But until that day comes, there's one truth that you can take to the bank. Seattle hates the Thunder, and they always will. All right, so one of our past episodes, I talked about how Major League Baseball has an umpire problem, that baseball sees more stars and managers ejected than any other sport, that umpires too often make the game about themselves. So much so, there's an actual term for it called the Ump Show, when the umpire, instead of being the silent authority keeping the game moving, decides that they're the main character in the story. And honestly, I thought Major League Baseball was bad. Oh boy, I thought I had seen it all until I turned into the College World Series this weekend. Now, maybe you've seen the video by now. If not, I'll walk you through what happened. Coastal Carolina is facing LSU. It's a must-win Game 2 for Coastal Carolina when their head coach, Kevin Schnall, gets into a back and forth with the home plate umpire, Angel Campos. Now, this was not some prolonged screaming match going nose to nose in the 8th inning. No, this was the first inning. Schnall thought Campos had blown 3 calls early and voiced his frustration, maybe a little too loudly. But Campos, in response, didn't give a warning, didn't try to calm things down, just turned around and tossed the head coach. 1 inning into a must-win game, just like that. But it didn't stop there. A second umpire entered the situation, Casey Moser. He trips over Campos's feet and blames Schnall for pushing him. Campos claims that Schnall bumped him, and just like that, hands down a 2-game suspension. I wish I were making this up. Jeff Passan, ESPN's lead baseball insider, put it perfectly when he tweeted, quote, "If this is all it took for Kevin Schnall to get ejected, that is absurd." Now look, should Kevin Schnall be arguing balls and strikes? Probably not, but it's the College World Series. It's the biggest stage of the year for the teams, for the players, and you have your head coach tossed in the first inning over some borderline calls. It's ridiculous, and what's worse, it's a problem, again, that seems unique to baseball. Why is that? Why does this sport, more than any other, have officials who insert themselves into the story? Now, I don't know Kevin Schnall. Maybe he is a hothead. Maybe he's a modern-day Earl Weaver who always has to yell and scream. But I can tell you what I do know. Angel Campos has a history, and it's not a great history. All you need to know is he has a Wikipedia page that's practically a rap sheet. The fact that any college umpire has a Wikipedia page tells you it's probably not good. As it turns out, he actually served as a major league umpire from 2007 to 2014, and in that time, he became notorious for having one of the shortest fuses in the league. Quick to eject, slow to de-escalate. And it drew huge criticism from players and managers, and not just from fans. He umpired 585 games in the majors, racked up 23 ejections, which is a lot. Have you ever seen an NFL official rack up 23 ejections in their career? What about an NBA official? And while Major League Baseball never gave a reason for his departure, let's just say there were strong rumors that it had everything to do with his inconsistency and his inability to keep his cool. So now, here's years later, he's resurfaced, and not just at any game, the College World Series championship round. And as if ejecting the manager or head coach was not enough, the first base coach, Matt Schilling, also got involved, and boom, he got ejected too. And this next part, I swear, you could not script this any better. Campos's full name is Angel Hernandez Campos. That's right. He shares a name with perhaps the worst umpire in the history of Major League Baseball. You cannot make it up. But here's the thing. Umpires, referees, officials, they're supposed to be like police officers on the field. And just like with good policing, the role a lot of the times is to de-escalate the situation, not pour gasoline on it and toss a match. What Angel Campos did was not just overkill, it was almost like showboating. It was about making the game about him. Nobody's going to push him around on the field. So look, maybe Coastal Carolina would have lost the game anyway. That's not really the point. The point is you have the College World Series Finals being about a first inning ejection. That's a failure. It's a failure of officiating, it's a failure of judgment, and it's a black eye for college baseball. The umpire should never be in the lead of the story. Not in the championship game, not ever. And yet here we are again. Baseball, of course, where the guy behind the plate just had to be part of the story. Two last things for this episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. One, now that the Thunder are your NBA champions, everyone's going to say, well, they're set up for a dynasty. They're set up for a run. All these same people that are saying that about the Thunder said the same thing about the Celtics, said the same thing about the Nuggets, and it hasn't happened. Now, look, I would agree, being the youngest team in the finals in 40-something years would make you believe that the Thunder are set up for success, especially with all the draft picks that Sam Presti has compiled. They look that way on paper. But on paper, things don't always work out in reality. So I get it. The Thunder are your NBA champs, and it does seem like they're set up to win a couple more of these things before it's all said and done. But plans have a funny way of going sideways a lot of time in sports. The other thing, Kevin Durant is headed to the Houston Rockets. And of course, just like clockwork, the headlines are predictable. The Rockets are an instant contender. They can win it all. KD found a perfect fit. Please, give me a break. Look, the Rockets were already a contender. They were the 2 seed in the West this season. They've got a good young core. They play hard. They've got a great coach in Ime Udoka. And you drop in Kevin Durant, one of the greatest scorers the league has ever seen, and the reaction is obvious. Yes, title or bust. On paper, again, it should be a perfect fit. But here's the problem. We don't play games on paper, and this is so on brand for Kevin Durant. When the going gets tough, Kevin gets going someplace else. It happened in Oklahoma City, where he couldn't get over the hump with Russ and Harden. He left the team that drafted him for the 73-win Warriors. It happened in Golden State, where he won 2 titles, but he still wasn't happy. He goes to Brooklyn and teams up with Kyrie, and that was a disaster. And then Phoenix, he has Devin Booker, he's got Bradley Beal. It's a new super team. That was all the headlines, and it flamed out very quickly. So where does he go next? A young team with momentum that doesn't need him to carry the load. But let's be honest here. Kevin Durant doesn't want to do the heavy lifting. He didn't really want to do the heavy lifting in his prime. Now he's 37, 20 years in the league. The man is looking for the softest landing spot where he can do the least and maybe pick up another ring. Make no mistake, no star player has ever taken an easier path than Kevin Durant has. He's had every opportunity, and now this latest one with Houston, let's just say I don't think it's a safe bet. Will it work? Maybe. But it better work right away. Maybe they'll get to the finals this upcoming season and KD looks like a genius, but we've learned very quickly after 20 years, Kevin Durant wears out his welcome quickly. Happened in Golden State, happened in Brooklyn, happened in Phoenix, And if things don't go perfectly in Houston, how long you think before that all falls apart too? Kevin Durant's had a Hall of Fame career. But here's the thing. He kind of needs a title to kind of validate his career. He needs to win in Houston. And if he does, if he can guide a team that hasn't won anything close to a championship in a very long time, that would be the most impressive thing he has done in his career. Seriously, what are the other options? Bailing on Oklahoma City after blowing a 3-1 lead and joining the 73-win Warriors? Trying to build something in Brooklyn for that to completely fall apart? The Phoenix debacle? Winning in Houston would validate everything. It would prove that he could actually lead a franchise. He could elevate a franchise instead of just attaching himself to ones already made. All the hard work by Houston has been done before Kevin got there. And if he pushes them over the top, that's impressive. And in a team sense, more impressive than anything he has done in his Hall of Fame career. The problem is, I just don't think he really cares all that much about validation or about championships. He wants to go, play, score his 27 a night, and bounce after the game. If it doesn't work, that's fine. He'll go someplace else. That's not exactly a recipe for success. So I'm sure the Rockets with KD will now be a trendy pick going into next season, but I am skeptical because we've seen this movie before with Kevin Durant. The hype starts fast, the expectations are sky high, and then what? Generally, it falls flat. So the Rockets will win a bunch of games. They won a bunch of games before Kevin got there. Maybe they make a deep run, but until I see KD put this team on his back and finish the job, I'm not buying in. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you enjoyed the show, do me a favor. Please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you really like what you heard today, share it with a friend. Help us grow the show one sports fan at a time. Until next time, I'm Gordon Damer. Thanks for listening.